Sandman.
For over 4 decades, Jason Voorhees has terrorized audiences across 13 films, countless comic books, novels, and video games. He is the hockey mask titan of horror, the unstoppable force of Camp Crystal Lake. But beneath the mask, beneath the mythology, lies a story far more tragic, complex, and strange than most people realize. Today, I'm telling you the complete story of Jason Voorhees, from his birth, through his death, his resurrection, his journey to Manhattan, to hell, to space, and finally into a nightmare crossover with the only killer who might match him. I'm telling it all in order, with everything the films show us and everything the most compelling fan theories fill in. Let's begin at the beginning. The story doesn't begin with Jason. It begins with his mother. Pamela Voorhees was a deeply devoted, intensely religious woman who took a job as a cook at Camp Crystal Lake in Cunningham County, New Jersey, sometime in the early 1950s. She was a single mother, and she brought her young son with her because she had no other choice. Jason Voorhees was born on June 13, 1946, a Friday. The date matters. Even his birth was cursed. Jason was not like other children. He suffered from severe hydrocephalus, a condition causing abnormal fluid accumulation in the brain, which resulted in an enlarged, misshapen head and cognitive developmental delays. He also had a form of facial deformity that made him a target for relentless cruelty from the other children at camp. He couldn't speak clearly. He moved awkwardly. He was different in every visible way. Pamela loved Jason with a ferocity that bordered on obsession. She was fiercely protective, and the cruelty other campers showed her son fed a quiet rage inside her that would eventually consume everything. The counselors were supposed to watch the children. In the summer of 1957, they didn't. Jason, taunted and chased by other campers, allegedly fell into Crystal Lake and drowned. The counselors were too distracted by each other, by their own adolescent preoccupations, to notice until it was too late. His body was never recovered. Pamela Voorhees was shattered. Her grief transformed instantly, completely, into something darker. The following year, 1958, she returned to Camp Crystal Lake and killed 2 counselors, a boy and a girl she caught having sex, mirroring exactly the negligence she blamed for Jason's death. The camp closed. It tried to reopen several times over the following decades, but fires, contaminated water, and a string of accidents earned it a new nickname from the locals: Camp Blood. Here is where the most important fan theory enters the story, and it's one that I think many serious horror analysts consider essentially canon given the evidence spread across multiple films. Jason didn't drown. He survived. A severely deformed, cognitively impaired child, terrified and alone, pulled himself from the lake and fled into the surrounding woods. He was too afraid or too damaged to find his way back. He hid. He watched. He survived on animals, instinct, and the feral intelligence that extreme isolation develops. For over 20 years, Jason lived in the woods surrounding Crystal Lake, watching from the tree line as attempts to reopen the camp came and went. He watched his mother return in 1958 and kill those counselors. He watched the camp stay closed. And he waited. This theory explains everything that follows. It explains why Jason's body was never found. It explains his superhuman survival skills. It explains why he continues his mother's mission with such singular devotion. He watched her, idolized her, and when she was taken from him, vengeance became his entire identity. Camp Crystal Lake is being reopened. A group of young counselors arrives to prepare the site before the campers come. Steve Christie, Alice Hardy, Ned, Jack, Marcy, Bill, Brenda, and Annie. The locals warn them. A half-mad man named Crazy Ralph appears repeatedly, declaring the camp cursed and urging them to leave. A police officer named Dorf dismisses the warnings but carries his own unease. One by one, the counselors begin to disappear. The killer is never shown clearly. I want you to notice this watching the film. We see hands, we see a perspective, we hear heavy breathing. The film masterfully conceals the identity until its shocking final act. During a thunderstorm, Alice Hardy is the last survivor. She finds her friends dead and seeks refuge in the main lodge. Then Pamela Voorhees appears, a warm, friendly woman claiming to be a former camp cook who's come to help. She gains Alice's trust before the mask slips. Pamela's motive spills out in a fractured, chilling monologue. Her son drowned because the counselors were irresponsible. These new counselors are the same. They all deserve to die. They're all the same. She attacks. Alice fights back. They struggle across the camp into a boathouse onto the dock. In a desperate final moment, Alice grabs a machete and decapitates Pamela Voorhees on the shore of Crystal Lake. The killing is done. Alice is the sole survivor. She collapses into a canoe and drifts out onto the still water. Morning comes. Alice floats on the lake in the canoe, dazed and traumatized. Police cars appear on the shore. Everything seems over. Then, from beneath the water, a decomposed, mutilated child erupts from the lake and drags Alice under. She wakes up in a hospital, screaming. The police tell her no boy was found. "Then he's still out there," she whispers. This ending was initially conceived as a pure shock moment, a direct homage to the ending of Carrie. But it accidentally created the entire mythology of Jason Voorhees. The deformed boy in the lake, the implication that he survived, the suggestion that he's still out there waiting, it was never meant to be the foundation of a franchise, and yet it became exactly that. The key question the film doesn't answer: was the boy in the water real, or was it Alice's traumatized mind? The next film answers definitively. He was real. It is 1984, 5 years after Pamela's death. Jason has been living in the woods the entire time. I want you to think about what that means. Over 2 decades of total isolation, and then watching the one person who loved him get killed. He tracks down Alice Hardy, the girl who killed his mother, to her apartment in a different city. He finds her. He kills her. He takes Pamela's severed head back with him. We don't know exactly what he's been doing in those 5 years, but we know he found his mother's decapitated head and kept it, displayed on an altar in his woodland shack, alongside her sweater. This single detail tells us everything about Jason's psychology. He is a child emotionally, an eternal, grieving child who cannot move past the loss of the one person who ever loved him. This is Jason's first confirmed kill as an adult. It is not impulsive. It is deliberate, targeted, and required travel. Jason is not simply an animal. He has purpose. A new batch of counselors arrives at a camp adjacent to Crystal Lake, training to work with children with disabilities. Among them is Ginny Field, a psychology student who will become one of the franchise's most intellectually interesting final girls. Jason, still not wearing his iconic hockey mask, instead using a burlap sack with a single eye hole over his head, begins hunting them. The killings are brutal, efficient, and relentless. Ginny survives long enough to do something no one else has. She thinks about who Jason is. She puts on Pamela's recovered sweater and speaks to Jason as if she is his mother, appealing to the emotionally stunted child inside the killing machine. It works. Momentarily. Jason hesitates. His conditioning, his worship of Pamela, overrides his aggression for a crucial moment. Ginny exploits this hesitation to strike back. The burlap sack Jason wears in this film is significant, and I think it's worth pausing on. He is concealing his deformity, just as he always has. The hockey mask is still one film away from becoming iconic, but the impulse behind it, hide your face, hide what makes you different, hide what made them chase you into the lake, is already fully formed. This is the film that defines Jason visually for eternity, and I want to walk you through exactly how it happens because the story is almost accidental. Set the day after Part 2, a new group of teenagers arrives at a property called Higgins Haven on Crystal Lake. Among them is Chris Higgins, who has her own traumatic history with the area. She was attacked by a deformed man in the woods 2 years earlier. That man, we understand, was Jason. After killing the previous group's survivors and acquiring new weapons, Jason encounters a prankster named Shelly who is wearing a hockey goalie mask as part of a joke. Jason kills Shelly and takes the mask. He puts it on. The transformation is complete. In that single moment, one of horror cinema's most recognizable images is born, not designed by a committee, not conceived as branding, but stumbled upon almost accidentally by a killer who simply needed a better way to hide his face. When I think about the hockey mask, I think it tells us something profound about Jason. He is always covering himself. The burlap sack. The mask. He cannot bear to be seen because being seen meant being mocked, being chased, being driven into the lake. Every mask he wears is a scar from his childhood. Jason is taken to the morgue because he must be truly dead this time, right? He is not. He wakes up, kills a nurse and a doctor, and heads back to Crystal Lake. At a lakeside house next to the camp, two groups converge. A family including young Tommy Jarvis and his teenage sister Trish, and a group of partying young adults next door. Among them is a man named Rob Deere, hunting Jason to avenge his sister, one of the victims from Part 2. Jason systematically kills nearly everyone. Tommy Jarvis is 12 years old, obsessed with horror and special effects makeup, and already demonstrating the psychological intensity that will define his adult life. In the climactic confrontation, Tommy shaves his head to resemble Jason as a child, triggering a moment of confused hesitation in the killer. Trish and Tommy exploit the moment. Tommy hacks Jason with a machete, bringing him down. And then, and this is the moment I want you to pay attention to, Tommy continues hacking long after Jason stops moving. This child has crossed a threshold. Something in him has broken open, and Jason Voorhees put it there. The final shot of Tommy embracing his sister carries no relief. His eyes are blank, distant, and wrong. This is not a hero. This is the next chapter of the trauma cycle. I'll be honest with you, this film divides fans intensely, and I understand both sides. Tommy Jarvis, now a teenager, is placed in a halfway house for troubled youth after years of psychiatric institutionalization. He barely speaks. He is haunted by visions of Jason and violent impulses he can barely control. Then a series of Jason-style murders begins. The film eventually reveals, in a twist that many fans consider either brilliantly subversive or deeply unsatisfying, that the killer is not Jason at all. It's Roy Burns, a paramedic whose illegitimate son was killed at the halfway house. Roy snapped and started killing while dressed as Jason, using the legend as a template. Jason does not actually appear except in visions and nightmares. Here's what I think this film gets right despite its frustrations. It demonstrates how powerful Jason's mythology has become. A random, grieving person can adopt his image and create genuine terror. Jason Voorhees has become less a man and more a concept, a force that exists beyond any single body. The monster has outgrown its origin. That's actually a profound idea wrapped inside a film most people want to skip. This is my favorite entry in the franchise, and I think it's the most important film for understanding what Jason truly is. Tommy Jarvis, now an adult and still obsessed with Jason, goes to the cemetery to dig up and destroy Jason's corpse, to make absolutely certain he's gone. In a moment of catastrophic miscalculation, Tommy impales the corpse with a metal fence post. Lightning strikes. Jason is reborn. This is the moment I want you to mark carefully, because it fundamentally changes everything. Before this film, the franchise maintained at least a thin pretense of physical possibility. A deformed man with extraordinary strength and endurance, certainly, but a man. After this film, that pretense is gone. Jason is something else now, an undead killing machine, reanimated by electricity and sheer force of malevolent will. Tommy eventually defeats Jason by chaining him to the bottom of Crystal Lake, returning him to the water where everything began. It's a deliberately circular ending. Jason is back where he started, submerged in the place that made him. He will not stay there. A teenager named Tina Shepard has telekinetic powers. Years earlier, she accidentally killed her abusive father by causing the dock to collapse beneath him in Crystal Lake. The psychological trauma of that event has never healed. Her unscrupulous therapist, Dr. Cruz, brings her back to Crystal Lake hoping to trigger her powers for research purposes, using her trauma as a tool. I want to point this out because Dr. Cruz is the film's secondary villain, and I'd argue he's more despicable than Jason. He deliberately exploits a vulnerable person for professional gain. At least Jason has a reason rooted in tragedy. Dr. Cruz is just greedy. Tina accidentally uses her powers to free Jason from his chains at the lake bottom. She then has to fight the thing she unleashed. This film gives us Jason in arguably his most decayed, horrifying physical state. The mask cracked, bones showing through rotted flesh, his body a walking ruin that somehow keeps moving through pure supernatural force. The metaphor here is one I find genuinely moving. The monster that trauma creates can only be defeated by confronting that trauma directly. Tina summons her dead father from the lake, echoing the original film's ending, who drags Jason back to the depths. She defeats the external monster by facing the internal one. I have to be upfront with you about this one. Jason Takes Manhattan promises far more than it delivers. The title suggests a full-scale Jason rampage through New York City, but the budget only allowed for a few days of actual New York filming. Most of the movie takes place on a cruise ship. That said, there are moments here I genuinely love. The rooftop boxing scene, where a young boxer punches Jason repeatedly, with Jason simply waiting for him to tire before dispatching him, is both funny and terrifying in exactly the right way. And the Times Square sequence, where Jason removes his mask to terrify a group of gang members into fleeing, is a perfect encapsulation of how mythological he's become. The toxic sewer ending is best approached with generosity. Despite its flaws, this film does something important. It takes Jason out of Crystal Lake and proves that no environment can contain him. He doesn't belong to one place anymore. He belongs to the darkness wherever it gathers. This is the film I want you to approach with the most open mind, because it's the strangest and most mythology-dense entry in the franchise. The FBI sets a trap and blows Jason apart with overwhelming firepower. His body is taken to a medical examiner, who is then compelled by some dark force to eat Jason's still-beating heart. The film reveals, through a bounty hunter named Creighton Duke who seems to have inexplicable knowledge of Voorhees lore, that Jason is not simply an undead human. He is a demonic entity, a body-jumping evil that requires a Voorhees body to fully manifest. He can possess people by transferring a worm-like parasite between hosts. I know this is a lot. I know it breaks from what came before. But here's why I think it matters. It answers the question the franchise has been quietly building towards since Part 6. How does Jason keep coming back? What is he actually? The answer this film proposes is that Jason was never just a man, not even a deformed, traumatized, isolated man. He was a vessel for something that existed before him and will exist after him. The film ends with Jason defeated and dragged to hell, and then, in the post-credits scene, Freddy Krueger's glove reaches up from the earth and claims Jason's hockey mask. That single image generated a decade of anticipation, and it absolutely delivered. I'll be straightforward with you. Jason X is set in 2455, involves a cryogenically frozen Jason recovered by students from Earth 2, and follows him killing people on a spaceship. In space. And I love it. The film knows exactly what it is and commits fully. It doesn't pretend to be something it isn't. And within its glorious absurdity, it delivers one of the franchise's most inspired moments, Uber Jason. After being damaged beyond even his extraordinary regenerative capabilities, Jason is rebuilt by a medical nanite system into an armored, enhanced version of himself, faster, stronger, more terrifying than anything that came before. The film ends with Jason burning up on re-entry and crashing into a lake. A boy and girl watch the streaking light from a dock. Doesn't that make you want to go exploring? One asks. I think that line is the most honest thing the franchise has ever said about itself. The source of terror becomes a light in the sky. The monster becomes a mystery. And humans, being what they are, always want to go exploring. That's why Jason keeps coming back. We keep inviting him. I want to share a fan theory here that I find genuinely compelling. Jason X creates significant timeline problems. If Jason was frozen around 2008-2010, what happened between then and the 25th century? Many fans, myself included, believe Jason was frozen during a government containment effort following the events of Freddy vs. Jason, placing Jason X as the true final chapter of the classic continuity. The films were released out of this order, but chronologically, this reading makes the most sense. I want to tell you something about this film before we get into the plot. It was in development for a decade. Studios couldn't agree on the approach. Dozens of scripts were written and discarded. The post-credits tease from 1993 generated 10 years of fan anticipation and debate. When this film finally arrived, the pressure on it was enormous. And I think it largely delivers. Freddy Krueger has a problem. The teenagers of Elm Street have forgotten about him. Fear is his power. He needs people to fear him to exist in the dream world. No fear, no Freddy. His solution is diabolical. Resurrect Jason Voorhees from hell and send him to Elm Street. Jason's murders will be blamed on Freddy, reigniting fear of the dream demon and restoring his power. The plan works too well. Jason doesn't stop killing when Freddy wants him to. Jason cannot be controlled. And Freddy realizes he's created a rival who has no intention of stepping aside. The conflict between them is thematically rich, and I want to spend a moment on it. Freddy is cunning, psychological, and feeds on fear and control. Jason is pure, unstoppable, natural disaster level force. Their opposition is mind versus body, manipulation versus brute reality. Freddy fights in the world of dreams where he makes the rules. Jason fights in the world of flesh where no rules apply. The climactic battle is everything it needs to be. Neither fully wins. The final shot shows Jason emerging from Crystal Lake holding Freddy's severed head, which winks at the camera. Make of that what you will. I have watched that final shot many times and I'm still not entirely sure who won. The 2009 reboot takes the mythology back to basics while incorporating elements from the first 4 films into a single streamlined origin. This version of Jason is faster, more tactical, and more physically imposing than previous iterations. He's not supernatural here. He's a massive, intelligent survivalist who has lived in underground tunnels beneath Crystal Lake for decades. He grows crops. He stockpiles weapons. He has built an entire subterranean existence. I want to make a case for why I find this interpretation genuinely terrifying, possibly more than the supernatural version. An intelligent, territorial, physically extraordinary predator who knows every inch of his land and cannot be outrun or outwitted on his home ground is arguably more frightening than an unkillable monster. The supernatural Jason you can maybe defeat with the right weapon, the right ritual, the right circumstance. This Jason you simply cannot escape. He is better at being in these woods than you will ever be at anything. A sequel was planned but never produced due to legal disputes over the franchise rights, leaving this version of Jason's story unfinished, which feels appropriate somehow. Jason's story is never really finished. Jason Voorhees has appeared in 13 films, multiple comic book series, video games including the acclaimed Friday the 13th, the game, novels, and an endless stream of cultural references. His hockey mask is one of the most recognized images in the world. But the story that resonates, the reason I keep coming back to it, the reason you're watching this right now, is not the body count or the mask. It's the tragedy underneath. A deformed child who drowned because no one was paying attention. A mother whose grief became murder. A monster made by neglect, cruelty, and the particular human capacity to look away from the vulnerable and the different. Jason Voorhees endures because he represents something real, the consequences of abandonment. The rage that forms when the innocent are failed by those who should protect them. He is, at his core, a story about what happens when a child falls through the cracks of a society that doesn't want to look too closely at what it produces. He rises from the water again and again because that wound never heals. And somewhere at the bottom of Crystal Lake, the chains shift and the water ripples and something opens its eyes.